Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to this meeting of the Hawke's Bay Civil Defence Emergency Management Group Joint Committee. Welcome everyone, and kia ora Baden, would you like to lead us in karakia?
Yeah, kia ora, Alex, o tira tātou, kua hui mai nei ai tēnei rangi, mo te kaupapa kei mui a tātou. Hoi no, te tikana kia mihia, kia tangihia o tātou mate, me te aitua, kei te rori huarahi matua, mai ahuriri ki te Wairoa, no reira taua whanaunga ko ngaro nei, ina nahi rā, e tangi tonu ana ki aia o tira ngā mate huhua o te wā, no re ngā mate haere atura, rātau kia rātau, tātau kia tātau, te hunga ora, kua taupai mai nei, tīnana a ipurangi, tēnei te mihi atu nei kia tātau. No reira, ki noi tātou, he tō mātou matua nui te rangi, tēnei mātou te komiti, whakawhaiti ngā kaupapa, mō ngā huri pari, wera āhuatanga, kua pāmai nei kia tātou, kua piko nei ki mui a koe i tēnei wā, kia tuku whakawhetai, whakamoemiti atu rā ki a koe, mō ngā mea katoa nau i hōmai ki a mātou. No reire e pā, whakauhia mai tō wairua tapu, ki tēnā o tātou, kia takatū ai o tātou hapuri, mō ngā te huringa o te āhuarangi, ngā huarere, ngā āhuatanga katoa, kua pānei, ka pāmai nei ki a tātou anō hoki. No reire tēnei tamatau nei inui ki a koe, kia whakatūwhera pai tēnei hui, i rungi tinga tapu o hiukaraiti tō mātou kai whakaora. Āmene.
Āmene. Elder Baden, thank you, and thank you for acknowledging a member of our Wairoa community who lost their life during the rain event over the weekend. Thank you for that. And thank you to everyone that's joined us today. So I'm the Deputy Chair of this committee, and I will be offering apologies from Chair Hiniwai, which is why I am sitting in this seat. But welcome to Baden and Leon from TKO. Welcome to Deputy Mayor Annette Brosnan from Napier City. Welcome to Councillor Sophie Sears from Hawke's Bay Regional Council. Kia ora, Your Worship, Mayor Sandra from Hastings, and Councillor Jeremy Harker from Wairoa. Kia ora, and welcome to everybody that has joined us today. So leading the apologies today, first of all, from Chair Hiniwai. Apologies also from Mayor Kirsten and from Mayor Craig. Any other apologies that we need to note?
That's all we've got. Yep.
That's all. Do we need to move and second in your standing orders? We do. Can I have moved from Councillor Brosnan and seconded from Mr. Barber? Is that all right for standing orders?
Well, no, we probably, Baden's an advisory member. So
advisory member? Okay, so I will ask Ms. Sandra to second, please. Yes. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you all. Anyone have a conflict of interest for any item on the agenda today that they wish to note up front? No. Remember, you can raise that at any time in the meeting during the agenda. We have minutes to confirm from the 28th of August, which was our last meeting. Have we got someone who will move that they are true and correct?
Happy to move through you, Chair.
Thank you, Mayor Sandra. And I think that probably I need to be the person that seconds because I was there, so I will second that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Next item, your agendas work differently to my council meetings. Do we have any other items before we move to the decision items? No. Okay, great. So the first item for us to consider is the emergency management bill and a group submission that went from Hawke's Bay Sedum Group. Ian, would you like to speak to the paper?
Thank you, Chair. So look, this was, we had a small sort of workshop before we sent this off, and everybody got to see it in terms of the joint committee, and so really all I'm asking here is that you just endorse this officially get it on the record as this was the submission that was submitted on the bill. Obviously, we don't know where the bill is going. It's been withdrawn. That's the process. And the new government needs to decide as to how they want that to progress. So we're still waiting for advice on that.
Okay, great. So this is a submission that has been submitted into this process. We're not sure yet how it's going to be considered, but for us to record that we endorse this position as a submission. Any questions on the report? No? Right, well, the recommendation is that the Joint Committee receives and considers the submission and endorses the submission to the Emergency Management Bill as proposed. Just important to note that we all understand that this is a process that no longer is underway. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Councillor Brosnan and Councillor Sears. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just, I guess the next process after that will be from the review. We'll be able to then formulate some differences, opinions and feedback into the submission if it does carry on. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yes, so the independent review of our regional response will absolutely give us a platform for feeding back to the national system as well at some point in the future, as well as to our own system. So yeah.
It is, I guess, beneficial then that has been put on hold until we complete our review.
Yes, timing is probably
Timing is
good.
perfect.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that we'll hear a bit more from Sir Levy about the national process as well. Any other questions on that? Otherwise, our next item is an update from NEMA, and welcome Sir Levy, who is here to join us today. And we have got a short update that you've provided us in writing, but over to you to talk us through what's happening in the National Office.
Love, Chair. Today, mole awanua whai tātou whānau nei aso. As per the update, it's just a few matters. One that's already been raised in regards to the Emergency Management Bill. Obviously, with the government announced with its members today, we won't know until probably later on this week what the decision will be from the new incoming Minister, Honourable Mark Mitchell. And from there, ELT will then brief us as to what steps we can then take. In terms of the operations, our new National Operations Manager is Wendy Wright, with the resignation of Roger Ball, who resigned last month on the 27th of October. Also, AJ McJay, who was our acting manager for the our team lead for infrastructure, is now the National Operations Manager up until February next year, when the appointment will be advertised. Charlie Blanche, who was the National Ops Manager, has been seconded to Remo, and he's doing well there. The other point to note is that next year there have been a number of warning orders that have been distributed to the groups in regards to the national exercise, a whenua taking place in June, July next year, details of which will be circulated on an ongoing basis to all groups, plus other agencies involved. In early October this year, we had a national annual exercise involving the New Zealand Emergency Management Assistance Team, or EMAT, in Auckland, and that was to test the capability of the alternate national Coordination Management Centre, or NCMC, in the event that Wellington, should a disruption occur down there, be compromised. The recovery update, we currently have 13 groups and districts that are still in the recovery phase, and in which there is an appendix at the last page there, and the number of reviews are still currently ongoing, so we won't know about the updates on those reviews until later on as well.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm interested with the map of where the rest of the country is activated, because we're one of 13 regions in recovery, and then there's that number of mostly the South Island, which is still being NEMA supported. Interested in what that means, the NEMA supported bit for the rest of the country?
I'll have to get back to you on that one. I think some of it was ongoing from West Coast, which is still ongoing from that, but in terms of what's with Canterbury and Otago, I haven't heard much from there, sorry.
And does it, when the regions are in recovery, does that mean there are other staff from NEMA that are deployed into regional offices?
No.
So you talked about Remo having a staff member seconded to them, but is there secondments into any other regions?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
So all operating from Wellington.
Yes.
Other questions for Salevi? Baden?
Kia ora, Salevi. Just in terms of what NEMA's doing with iwi and Māori communities, what's happening there? I think we might have had a presentation from the Māori, I forget his name, at the National Iwi Chairs Forum,
Yes.
just recently.
Yep.
But certainly from our perspective, we are looking for support from NEMA for our marae communities. I mean, we're doing stuff like National Iwi Chairs have funded some crates of containers of emergency gears, but it's more education.
Yes.
Just having stuff sitting at the marae isn't going to cut it. We need education for our people, just around a whole range of emergencies that are likely to crop up.
Through the chair, so we have a ohumahi that's currently working on that with our chief Māori advisor, as well as our principal advisor. They had a presentation to MDOG last week around what our Te Kahu Mātara program will look like, and then hopefully we can then start circulating that next year, but it will take some time.
Good point.
But that's definitely on a high priority for us.
Good. And I just through you, Madam Chair, through the committee, I guess. I mean, the fact that we don't have have a recovery minister. Is there a minister for the recovery?
So the new minister is Mark Mitchell, who is the Minister of Emergency Management and Recovery.
Is he doing both?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
so the whole, all of the R's.
Right. Okay, I thought there was no one. So he's the one that's
Yep.
gonna. Do we have a regional?
So the region is reaching out to the new minister through letters from the region,
Okay.
through Patariki, and also through the briefing to the incoming ministers as well. So we're actively reaching out to the minister.
Oh boy.
I think it's really important that we invite him to come and visit us on the ground in the region as soon as we possibly can. And I know that our local MPs will be keen for that to happen too, so we'll join forces.
Because I obviously missed that we had a Minister of Recovery, because he's doing a couple of, it's one of his hats that he's wearing. So yeah, I'd like to know how much focus they're going to be putting on to this May here in Hawke's Bay specifically.
Thanks, Baden. Other questions for Salevi? Annette?
Through you, Madam Chair, I am interested in that relationship that you have with the new incoming minister and how that briefing process works. Obviously, you have an intimate knowledge of what we've gone through here, being involved in this committee, and sort of how you're able to coordinate that sort of knowledge shift into the space for the people that are now making those new decisions. So are you able just to give us a bit of a flavour of what that looks like from your organisation's perspective?
Yes. So through the chair, as REMAs, we then have contact with the private secretary, who will then brief the minister of what has occurred here in Hawke's Bay plus the other regions, so that he has an update of what the recovery piece is and what the impacts have been during the response for post-cyclone.
Thank you. And would you envision, through you, Madam Chair, that comes with an invitation to come and see us, to put feet on the ground and to potentially meet with this committee as well?
We can ask for that to occur through the chair.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Chair, I think, wherever there is an opportunity to make that sort of invitation, I think that is worthwhile.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you. Anyone else from the floor? We look forward to engaging in the exercise next year. I think that we would all reflect that that's something that we could all spend more time doing, being prepared for the big one and the smaller ones as well, so that's good. Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to vote, receive. What's the wording, Peter?
Accept?
Accept.
Yes. Yeah, all of the above.
To accept the report from NEMA that the Joint Committee receives and notes the NEMA update. There we go. Moved by Mayor Sandra. Is that your hand up, Sandra? Yes, and seconded by Sophie. All those in favour, please say aye. Against?
Aye.
Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Sylvie. Now, speaking of recovery, we have Regional Recovery Agency here with a report and an update on recovery activities, and our Chief Executive, Ross, welcome. Would you like to speak to your report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Kia ora, good afternoon, everyone. Really just wanting to put this report in front of the committee. I know we're reporting to various governance entities across the region, but important that the CDMG also has overview of the fourth R as part of that accountability mechanism for recovery. Probably just a brief overview, and I won't go through this in detail, but just putting the plan formally before that's gone through the process iteration one plan. In noting some of the progress that's been made, the funding from government that has flowed into the region so far. Also, just noting the work, particularly around the future of severely affected land, the work that's gone on there by the councils, and the work programs that are coming out of that, delivering on the property buyouts and the flood protection and transport projects that have come out of that. Good progress is being made on that work. And probably the final aspect is the sort of, now as we are in the transition phase from the restoration phase of recovery, to look at how we rebuild, how we build resilience into what we're doing, both in terms of infrastructure and social and economic systems, and what opportunities come out of that for the region, and update there where the focus of the agency is going. So I won't speak for too long on that. Really happy to answer any questions or have some discussion, but I'll leave it there, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Ross. Any questions on the recovery report? Hi, Sophie.
Yeah, I have. Oh, sorry, you go first.
I'll go Sophie first, then you, Jeremy, then you, Sandra.
Kia ora, thanks, Chair. Thanks, Ross. Kind of a little bit the conversation we've just had around these relationships, central government and new ministers, and I suppose it'd be nice to hear from you about when you see the connections starting to form with the new government, or if you have some idea of when those conversations might happen. I mean, I know the government was really clear about standing behind all the decisions made by the previous government, but it's going to be a lot more coming at us. So it'd be quite nice to hear from you, Ross, about how on the timeline you see that conversation developing.
Thank you, through you, Madam Chair. I think that work obviously is probably one of our principal focuses at the moment, as the new government comes into place, and sort of paragraph 19 in the report refers to that a little bit. We have been holding the pen for the region's BIM. The region decided through Matariki to have a unified briefing to the incoming ministers. That's ready to go, just the accompanying letters being written for that now that we know who the ministers are. And that's really the invitation to engage. The National 100-Day Action Plan that they campaigned on had a commitment in there to engage fairly rapidly with cyclone impacted regions. And that's something we're regarding the BIM as an invitation to do that. Obviously, that'll be across the government as a whole, and a range of specific ministers through transport, infrastructure, recovery, and a range of other things that are important to the region. So that work is happening as we speak, and contact being made as appropriate, and that will extend through to when we know who's in ministers' offices at that level, obviously continuing the relationships we've had with officials and looking to support the regional leaders of Matariki to build those relationships with incoming ministers.
Ministers. Thank you. Through you, Chair, just to say thank you, Ross. I know from other conversations that the officials and outgoing government was holding the recovery agency in really high regard. So I have all confidence that that will go well, and want to thank you and your team for bridging that into this new conversation, which we know is going to be really important for us. Kia ora.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sophie. Jeremy?
Yeah, I might be barking up the wrong tree here, but I'm just looking at that transition to resilience and opportunity capture, and just seeing what's been happening over the last sort of 3 to 4 months with the weather. There seems to what we're seeing is this region, and I could probably say the same for Tairāwhiti, that the recovery and the return to, to trying to take these opportunities around rebuilding better and resilience has been impacted by, what's happening climate-wise and weather-wise, but the lack of sort of action that's been taken around for a variety of reasons around trying to improve what we've got here on the ground. I'm thinking around drainage, I'm thinking around responses to protection, around roads, around riverbanks and stuff like that. That is just because they are so inundated now, the damage is getting worse and worse, and is actually making it harder and harder to actually get some recovery and some resilience in there. And we're actually getting to a stage where the question may be asked, what's the point of rebuilding or doing that, because the opportunity has been missed to fix it. So I'm trying to see I suppose my question is, what is going to be done around trying to get a number of projects going and a number of activities going that are going to fix what's causing problems now, based on the increase in inundation we have here. So drains, river bar openings all up and down the coast, protection to roads. There we're just sit here waiting for action to take place. And it's just that it doesn't take much rain to cause a problem, and you can then transfer that to thinking it's not going to take much more of another type of natural disaster to worsen them as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, that's quite a question at a number of levels.
Yeah,
I think there's probably a number of levels of answer as well, and I think the first thing I'd say is that up till now, a lot of what we've been focused on has been restoring connectivity to people that were without it, and I guess patching up what's there already. And I think you're highlighting some of the probably on the ground issues that are apparent across a number of the areas where councils and others own infrastructure, and it's under threat. So I think there's an element there where there needs to be the prioritisation of those works by those infrastructure owners, and then we can look at what the priorities are, for funding assistance or whatever assistance they need, or whether the infrastructure owner can just get on with what they need to do. I think when we talk about building resilience, and a lot of that is going to be potentially building things in different places, or alignments, or what's the solution if there are vulnerabilities in specific areas? How do we best address them? Is that a patch up in the same place? Is it doing something more substantive in the same place, or is it looking at opportunities for doing things differently in a way that is not so vulnerable to climate hazards and to other hazards, and particularly heading north towards Wairoa, we've got some assets on some fairly not the most stable land in the country. So there's probably a combination of things there. We have been in that restoration phase. I guess it's having those needs and the ones that can't be met locally for works that are going to aid resilience come through into the plans, and the work that's going forward to Waka Kotahi and others to assess.
Yeah, I suppose the issue is that there's a couple of agencies, like we're talking recovery, we're talking resilience and opportunities there, and there seems to be a number of decision makers or agencies that have decisions that enter into that seems to slow the process down rather than speed it up. And a classic example from a resilience or a civil response, a civil defence response, is what was able to be done around opening up the bar at the this weekend, where people saw the event coming, had been talking about it, and saying let's get it open up quickly. And I know the discussion was around get to one of the contractors here was get prepared to do it this week coming up after the event. And so there's opportunities to get ahead of these things and a recovery, and I think we just need to have a little bit more of a proactive response and thought around this. And I know this seems to be quite tactical, but we're now at a stage where our resilience and recovery is going to be impacted because our decision making is really slow.
Thank you, Jeremy. And I think that's a really useful insight, because you're right. Actions are happening at a number of different levels across different agencies, and that can be confusing and difficult, which is part of where the recovery agency trying to join some dots for us to help make that simpler, so we're not recreating things. But that's going to be a juggle we're going to have ongoing, and as we're juggling resource, because we're in a kind of a space now where Band-Aids actually are needed in many places just for for livelihoods to continue in the short term, which is not what any of us want, because we know that's not resilient. But we're just, with the resource constraints, we have to make some of those calls. So it's a really well articulated point. Thank you, and something we all need to continue to take on board. Sandra.
Kia ora, and thank you, Alex. Ross, and first of all, thank you for the recovery plan. It's a fantastic document, and well brought together by so many. And so, congratulations. And I'm excited about the BIM getting to the new government in the next few days. I just want to sort of have a bit of an understanding around silt and debris, and from your perspective as you coordinate everybody, and just reading that part of the plan that talks about land returning to productive use. Do we have any information from the sector, the Horde sector, how much land has been returned to productive use, and are we still working in the same criteria as we think about our priorities now going forward, and what's most important? I'm just really interested in, just heard some comments in the community about, are we moving too much? If we're going to seek some more funding from the new government, is the criteria still the same as we understand, the land use for the future? And so, are we having wider conversations with the industry about debris and silt?
Through you, Madam Chair, I'm pretty sure that the task force is having a lot of those conversations and the process for assessing priorities as land, for land to be cleared. I just don't have with me the figure on the hectares of land that's been brought back into production at the moment. But I think from an overview picture, if you look at the quantum of silt that was deposited around Hawke's Bay, the plan was only ever to move about 20% of that, and that was targeting the land that was most valuable to sort of clear and bring back into production as a rule. There were small residential components, but the main focus was on productive land.
Yes.
So and of that 20%, so far we've shifted about half, and that's been there was some setup costs, but there's been good work done, some significant work done to shift that first half. I think the criteria are probably reasonably set, but will evolve as we get further through, where you've done the first part of that clearance and probably some of the high valued land, looking at what comes next. And obviously, if the region is to seek more funding for that work, it'll need to be making a case because of the government's fiscal position of what we're buying for any additional funding that goes in. So we're working on that now, sort of to assist the region to ascertain to what extent it wishes to push for further assistance in that area.
Thank you, Ross. I know that our whole focus has been on standing up our horticulture sector again and get our land back into productive use, and we've done a lot. That has been the criteria. I'd like to understand the risk analysis of if we don't have the figures that we've heard of, around the $70 million, if we don't get that, what is that financial impact that would be for our region's GDP? And I think that's probably would be really helpful for us to kind of understand. I don't know who would do that work, but maybe the task force already have that work in hand. But I'd just be interested to understand if we didn't get any more funding for SILT, and we know that it's been challenging, what is the financial impact for us as a region? Thank you.
And probably, Sandra, the idea of what are the economic measures that we are tracking to see what recovery looks like and what we consider as being adequate or not, and what that particularly means in the hort sector. I think that's probably an important piece of strategic work around outcomes, that economic productivity piece. Thank you. Baden?
Yeah, just supporting Jeremy's comments about some of the infrastructure up in the Wairoa area. I'm talking about the Nuhaka situation with the school flooding and then the chapel flooding. So that school's got to meet somewhere. I don't know where they're meeting at the moment, but that could be solved by clearing some of those drains or whatever's blocking it up to let that water flow. So I'll put a plug in there for Jeremy and that side of it. But my corridor really is around, was it Section 18, 19, 20, around the treaty. We're hearing some corridor from this incoming government that is concerning to me. I just want to make sure that in this recovery plan that it doesn't get watered down, the relationships that we have with Matariki and how we're trying to move forward, the impact on our communities in terms of some of our marae and all of that. So, I mean, it's in there to uphold the Treaty of Waitangi. Yeah. But if you think about any other ways to really beef that up, Ross, because we just want to be clear, and I'll make it clear when we meet with the ministers or whoever, that is a strength to this recovery plan. I think is the kind of relationships that we have here with ourselves. So, but yeah, I just know that some of the policies are going to be changing, and I don't want us to be responding or preempting any of that stuff. We here. Maike tonu atu. So, working together is going to be important, and I think we're going to need to be strong with some of the stuff that's coming down the pipeline, actually. It'll try and divide us.
Kia ora, Baden. I just acknowledged in the first instance, it's actually part of the reason why our strategy for having a regionally led regional recovery agency is actually really important, because this is not a government policy-led structure and mechanism. This is actually really, really about the region and what's important to us. And so how the recovery structures and the plans have come together, that's from us. That's not because of a policy platform that's come from somewhere else. And actually, you're right, we need to stay true to what it is that we've done as a region and as local communities is important. So that is a strength. Ross, did you want to add anything?
I just totally understand what you're saying, Chair Alex. However, the way that government chooses to spend their money does have impact on relationships at a regional level, and I'm just saying, hey, when it comes, and it will come, that we just need to be ready whakanoa
Yeah, kia ora.
aua kōrero. Thank you.
My only brief comments through you, Madam Chair, would be we take our direction from Matariki Governance Group, and one of the principles of our operating framework is genuine partnership with Māori, and that's our guiding framework.
Thank you.
Kia ora.
Just the one other thing that was not really talked about in huge depth in the report is actually about housing and the shortfalls in the emergency housing work that's happening. We've got lots of cabins, some mobilised by Ngāti Kaununu and some still being mobilised by the MSD mechanisms, the name of which TAS has gone out of my head. Have we got any numbers or sense of how many people are still physically displaced who are struggling with housing?
Not to hand. I'm talking regularly with MSD about that, and that there are programs going on, as you've alluded to, in the short term. They're also trying to put people in other placements that have need, both TAS and also MSD with the ongoing work. We have a underlying housing crisis, and then we have had the exacerbation of the cyclone, which has not only directly displaced people, but also indirectly displaced people that were in secure housing in the market if people have moved in from affected areas and moved into their brother or sister's house. So aware of that. There's a short-term there's programs going on to try and use recovery investment to try and get more housing away, and there's also the longer-term programs through HUD that our iwi partners are working on.
Thank you. Yeah, there are some longer term recovery plays in the plan and certainly in the pipeline, so that's good.
Housing recovery plan as well, yeah.
Okay, Baden?
Yeah, just support that. I think housing's a huge part of our recovery. But in terms of the cabins and that mahi, it's a big mahi, and I think we're working with every council in here to try and speed that up around resource consents, building consents. But we have 50 cabins that have been completed. 30 have been landed. 20 are sitting on a, just sitting there waiting for either consenting or screw piles to be put in, actually. Yeah, out of the 86. So the mahi's happening as fast as we can move it.
And it is an issue, assistance to sort of speed that up as one of the issues chemist in the bin.
Yeah, that's good. So that's being highlighted to government. Thank you. Right, so today the Joint Committee is receiving and noting the Regional Recovery Agency update, which includes the recovery plan that has been attached to the agenda as well for noting. Can I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Sandra, Jeremy? Jeremy's going to move and Sandra's going to second. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Ross. Appreciate your work. Thank you. And particularly those that are still displaced from their homes for a whole variety of reasons. Now, next item is our monitoring performance report from Ian.
Kia ora. Madam Chair, committee members. So, look, the purpose of this report really is just to update you as to how we're going with implementing the work program. This is obviously reported to KEG as well, and it was about a month ago. I just sort of by way of background, obviously we've been through a significant event. Our work program was approved by this committee at the end of last year, and obviously that has been challenging. After Gabrielle, we sat down with the KEG, and the priorities that the KEG gave us are outlined in paragraph 3. In terms of moving forward, I just want to note that the work program does link back to our group plan, which is the 4 Rs. So we do actually have that thread that goes through our strategic documents, through to our work programs, and through to the work that is happening on the ground. Other challenges with regards to our work program, obviously we've had a series of weather events. Orange warnings seem to be coming up every fortnight at the moment. Obviously we were busy supporting Wairoa District Council over the weekend. I've got some staff members going up there tomorrow to help them out and try and relieve the pressure that they've got up there. So that's just going to be ongoing in terms of affecting the way that we can actually implement the work program. Good news is the team's now back up to full strength for the first time since the first lockdown in COVID. So finally have a full team. Just in terms of the different areas, risk reduction, first tsunami is coming back on the radar screen, I suppose you might call it, from a national perspective, and it is still one of our most significant hazards. So we are working through some national changes around evacuation planning and evacuation zones, for example, and starting to re-stand back up our program around that. But I'm very mindful of getting the balance right between supporting the ongoing recovery and other work that we need to do, and not dropping the ball on that. In terms of community readiness, I think this has been an area where we've made some really good progress in terms of the developing and supporting the hub, what we're calling the hub process. That was work that we did with Wellington Regional Emergency Management Office, and we're starting to roll that out across all of the councils. We've been focusing primarily with Hastings District Council in terms of just piloting this with their connectors and doing some training with hub coordinators. Over the weekend, I went to a meeting at Maraenui on the Saturday morning with a whole lot of community members from there, and they were really supportive of this hub, the emergency hub, and us supporting them in terms of developing the hub. So we'll roll this out through the regions, working with the councils, obviously, because it really has to be a partnership between ourselves and the councils, but also with tangata whenua as well. So that we're working at, well, how can we adapt this and work with this moving forward. In terms of operational readiness, the key things there are really around our shared information systems and intelligence products development. So this is all IT stuff. I've just put a snapshot of the screen on there that we've again developed. So this is happening at a national level, but we've taken a bit of a lead and again working with Wellington, essentially replicating what they've done and adapting it for Hawke's Bay. But this is the screen that people will see when they go into the EOC or the GECC over in Hastings. If you were the planning manager, you click on that and your tools will be there, templates will be there, and what will happen is that this will roll out across the region, and it currently is also being put into our training program so that when people train during the courses, they're actually using this tool, so they're getting used to it. So that's ongoing. Training in terms of developing our workforce capability, that's obviously a big priority. And again, it is around how do we develop our capability in line with national training packages and tools. And so that's been a big push again across all of the groups and with my fellow group managers. And so again, we're taking a little bit of a lead and again, using the Wellington packages that they've developed, again, adapting them for Hawke's Bay and for the way that we operate. We've run some pilot courses. The feedback has been positive. We're further developing more detailed courses around specific functions, around intelligence, for example, planning, etc., etc. And then we're going to start rolling those out next year. So the KEG has looked at it, they've agreed. We're now in the process of just working out which courses will run where and where the priorities are across the councils and what staff are other priorities across the councils, working with the different P&C teams across the councils. Just the final thing I'd like to bring to your attention really is around governance and management. So group plan review, this is a high priority. We need to review our group plan It's part of the LTP request that we've put forward to Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and then partnering with Māori and emergency management as well. There's already been a little bit of discussion about the changes that have happened, are starting to happen at a national level, but I think from my perspective anyway, that doesn't change the way that we want to move forward. We still need to move forward and partner effectively with tangata whenua, and resourcing to enable that to happen is part of the LTP as well. And then just on that, I've been working with the team here and Dr. Pete, who is the CE here, in terms of getting what we discussed at the last meeting around resourcing in front of the regional council. At this stage, it's still in the LTP. There's been a couple of workshops. There's still a bit more discussion to go, obviously. I've just sort of in the process of drafting up a letter that will go with some information to the regional councillors, signed by the chair, and that will be at sort of, I think the final workshop is in December, about December the 15th. So that's we were aiming for to get that hopefully put into the draft. So if there's any questions, happy to answer.
Thank you. Questions for Ian? Ian, I'm wondering whether in this reporting we could sharpen the focus a bit on what we pay attention to, and I wonder whether the report should include, the very first page should be the list of the top 10 risks in Hawke's Bay, to continue to put in front of people what are the risks that we're dealing with and why we talk about tsunami a lot and flooding less so, in terms of how we're managing our risk knowledge and our reduction. And similar with the resilience work, which was the community resilience planning was another priority one action. What does a list of the coastal and rural communities that need to be involved in this work, and how do we tick them off, or at least monitor how much further we've got to go, including the marae, list of communities in marae, so that we're really clear. There's probably, off the top of my head, probably 50 or 60 places that need that to happen, and we're dealing with 5 currently, so we've got a lot of work to do. So how do we get across and be really focused on the work that we're doing in that space, and it's front and centre?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. That's what we were trying to deal with, but in effect, we're actually dealing with a lot more than 5 at the moment. And you may recall the last report we were listed. Audrey came to give you a presentation, and there was a number of communities that were listed right across the region. So we're pretty busy, and down, down in your space and across Hastings, Wara, and we're starting to do some work in Napier as well. So it's way more than 5. Can't tell the exact number, but it's heading up 15 to 20 communities that we're working with at the moment.
I just think if it's a priority work stream and there is something that we can front and centre to this committee every time we meet, that it's really then focuses us all on what is it, the work that we're trying to achieve, and not just your group staff, but actually all of us as a collective of agencies, because we all have a responsibility to operationalise those things as well. I think it would help focus our attention on the important things. Sophie?
Kia ora, through you, Chair. Alex, I completely agree with you. I have something else to say, but actually seeing the work stream in some sort of format where you can track what's happening within those priority communities and how steps are being taken, I think would be a really useful way to be following it. I may not be brought in again to this committee, but if I was, that's exactly the way I'd like to see it. So I agree with that. Ian, I'm quite interested in this community readiness section 13. I was part of the conversation over at Hastings District Council around some of these community hubs and what's happening in that. I know CEDAM was there. I thought it was really being led by Hastings District Council, but it's probably all coming together unless it's separate pieces of work. I'm interested to understand how the interface is going to work. If something's come out, a community hub's coming out of a community, Hastings District Council, connectors there, there's the building part, that's okay. The funding, that's being done externally, I know. So a plan's put together. In the emergency, which is, of course, where we want things to work, how is this interface between these community groups that are working, the District Council and the CEDAM group coming together? How does that piece work, please?
Yeah, it may be a little bit different depending on the council, but at this stage with Hastings, and I met with Bruce Allen and a few others last week actually about this, we very much see the relationship as being held by the local council, and we would support that. So we're sort of the subject matter experts. We develop the program, which is what we did in this particular case. We've developed the training that is needed around that. We'll help deliver that if required. But really the relationship is led by the councils, and particularly in Hastings and Napier. And I've yet to have this conversation with Wairoa and Central Hawke's Bay, but because their resourcing is different. But that's definitely how I think we would make the best traction, is for us to work more in partnership, but definitely local councils leading the local relationships.
Just to follow up through you, Chair. So in terms of resourcing, the district councils then resourcing that part themselves? Because I'm thinking about the funding, the CEDM funding through regional council. Is that putting another layer of resourcing requirement? Is that falling back onto district councils?
No, I think we like, for example, the meetings that we just had in Maraenui over the weekend. We basically organise and pay for that out of the CDM budgets. But councils already have resourcing in terms of community development, and I assume that they're leveraging off that. But it is something which I think is an issue for the local councils, and talking to Bruce Allen about it in particular, as to how they resource that sort of stuff. How do they resource these hubs and the work they need to do moving forward? But the model is not the councils or ourselves taking a lead. The model is the community taking a lead. So that's where we sort of see it. If we can leverage funding from other sources, which we've obviously been able to do post-cyclone, then that's what we will do. And we can probably leverage more money moving forward in terms of supporting the establishment of these hubs. But it is community-led.
Okay.
Sophie?
Thank you.
I think a helpful context is some of the review that we did following previous emergency activations in the region identified this mix of what happens locally versus what happens regionally as an issue and an area that we need to do more work on. It is how I would describe it as kind of learning as we're doing, because our communities are in a real doing space at the moment. But as we review the group plan next year, I think that's where we're going to have to get really pointy about learning from the cyclone review, which will land its findings early next year, which will feed into everything else we've learned from emergency activation in the last 3 years, to really get very pointed in our group plan about who does what and how it's resourced the right way, including supporting community activation. So there's a whole lot of things working together here in the next 6 to 12 months.
Yeah, I think that's a good response. Thanks, Alex.
Leon?
To you, Madam Chair. I think just following on from this community resilience work, there is a lot of that going on already in the communities. It's the question is, how do we connect that up with this, with civil defence and the wider Hawke's Bay regional plan? I know there's one to be held in Wairoa, the chambers, on the 7th of December, where the hubs and the containers and all the other resilient things will be discussed. I'm just concerned about whether we're hooked up with that and we're not getting left behind from that. If that's going ahead and that's occurring, why don't we know about that? So then we can feed into these national plans. So.
Yeah, so through you, Madam Chair, yes, we definitely are hooked in, as you say. As this is, and it's every district is at a slightly different space at the moment. Hastings is quite advanced, but we were involved in that, even if it was just attending the meetings and supporting it. But definitely there's a lot of work that goes in on the background around supporting this. And, I've got 2 or 3 staff who are sort of working on this, supporting the councils in the background. So definitely we don't want to do it separately from the councils. It's a joined up approach. Because we need to be very focused on this stuff.
I guess from my perspective, we don't see that connectedness with the civil defence being so urban, isolated as such, and have the fortitude to take on those activities and have those plans ready for themselves without the need to be part of a wider plan and wait for the region to support them. You would have seen that through Gabriel. I guess, yeah, just making sure that we're not duplicating and then
Yep.
we have a regional that comes in, wants to trump, and then we have national come in and do their thing. So we've got layer on top of layer. And Warrell's not sick of layers on top of layers, and we'll just cut through the layers and make sure we can get things done. So just making sure that everyone's aware of what that is. My actual second question is regarding the funding you noted in the report, Ian, for Māori, I think in section 22, the funding that's needed to be addressed. Is there a plan to source that funding in terms of?
Yeah, so that's in the regional council's long-term plan, and it's there at the moment. It's survived all the initial discussions with the councillors.
Thank you.
And I'd look forward to a supporting submission from you.
Oh, no problem. You just tell me what you need to write.
When the plan comes out, hopefully.
Sandra.
Kia ora, thank you, through you, Chair. I just want to pass on, Ian, the response from our community leaders who have attended the trainings. Said they're absolutely fantastic, and they really, really appreciate, what the work, the resilience work that we're all doing together. We started with funding for 10 communities. We're hoping for the funding for the next 10, and we've applied for that funding. I'm not sure that's been sort of announced the next 10, but working very hard to get that extra funding for the next 10. So just congratulations for the lined up approach. I think it's incredible that, to hear from our community leaders that the training's gone very well. Kia ora.
Thank you, Sandra, and I agree. I've had the same feedback from people in Central Hawke's Bay have been connected to it too, so thank you. Okay, right. Thank you, Ian. We need a mover and seconder to receive and note this report. And I'm going to go Sandra and Sophie. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried, thank you. Next item is update on the independent review, which is underway, and I believe Mr. Tate is going to speak to this report. Welcome, Doug.
Right, thank you, Your Worship. Look, I'll just speak very briefly and just noting that Mr. Bush has joined us on screen. But look, just simply saying as project sponsor, look, quite comfortable in terms of how things are tracking. I will just note in the report on page 22, the time does talk about a completion in January 2024. We are experiencing a few delays, and we're due to give a formal update to the committee on that very shortly. But on that, we're talking weeks, not significant months. So just to kind of give some surety on that. And again, we'll bring that back to the committee for an update very shortly. But other than that, Your Worship, happy to hand back to you and to Mr. Bush to present his report. So,
Thank you. Kia ora, Mike. Nice to see you there. Is there anything that you would like to add or point out from the process for this review?
Tēnā koe, Chair. Kia ora tātou te rangatira. Thanks for the opportunity to join. I do want to acknowledge the support we're having in this review from Doug, Melinda, Ian, and the comms team that you brought on. Extremely helpful. We're making good progress, solid progress. From a technical point of view, what I'll term the technical side, the operators, the civil defence people, emergency response management, the civic leaders, chief executives, we've spoken to all of those, so we've got those views. Where we're really at now is in terms of the engagement and consultation with mana whenua and with community. So all those pieces are in play. We were invited to the TKO last week, facilitated by Leon. Kia ora. Thanks for that. They were very clear on how they want to see that engagement occur. And we're up for that, obviously. We were also very conscious that, they will be suffering engagement fatigue. There's other reviews underway at the moment, and I might say at the same time we have engaged with those other reviews. So under Sir Jerry Mataparai and his team, the National Review, we've been talking to them on 2 occasions, and we've also connected with the Flood Prevention Review, Phil Mitchell and his team.
So we're very joined up around that stuff, sharing and caring and making sure that we don't do too much duplication. But going back to mana whenua, very keen for that face-to-face. We're planning that, putting it in place at the moment. They did state their expectation that one of the original members of our review team, Naiwi Tomoana, their expectation that he would lean into this and support and facilitate. So we're working through how that will occur. So that's all in play. In terms of the community engagement, as you well know, we have been conducting a community survey online. We've had between 900 and 1,000 responses. They are starting to peter out, but that's a great response. It'll be very helpful. We've extended that window to the 31st of December. As I say, it's starting to peter out, so it'll give us the opportunity to review those, understand the thematics that are coming through, and factor those into the review. Also very conscious of the fact that we are re-traumatising people as we go and ensuring that everyone we talk to, they know where to go for support, etc. And we are being as caring, compassionate and empathetic as we possibly can as we engage with everyone involved. So yeah, we're making solid practice, and as Doug mentioned, the engagement with mana whenua to do it properly might push our timeline out by a few weeks. I'll just open up for questions. Kia ora.
Thank you, Mike. And thank you for your update on the process. We've got a really clear terms of reference and a process set up in place for you to be an independent observer and analyser of the civil defence system and what your view on the improvements could or should be into the future. So I'm actually not going to open it up for questions at this point. I think that you're very clear on your status of where the project is up to, which I really appreciate, as the rest of the committee does as well. And thank you for that work and appreciate that. Jeremy's put his hand up.
Yeah, I hear you saying no questions, but I just got to, and this is probably because I haven't been involved with these before, but the questions around, I see there's engagement through communities and mana whenua. Is there also going to be engagements with those community or local responders, your contractors, your ambulance services within the different areas? For obviously my focus will be on Wairoa and the response and the opinions and observations that we had up here as well.
Yeah, we have had the team up in Wairoa for a few days, but we accept that there's more work to do there in terms of engaging with every emergency service and everyone that responded. We'll get across as many people as possible, Jeremy, but if you think there are people that we really need to talk to, we're really happy.
Yeah, I do.
We've got more work to do in Wairoa. We do recognise that.
Jeremy.
Yeah.
Can you, if you've got those things, can you direct them back through the sponsors process, which is led by Doug and the team, which is the process for that information, those connections to be made through to Mike? Thank you.
Yep, good as gold.
Appreciate it. Okay. Thank you, Mike, very much for your work. We're going to receive and note your report. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Annette and Sandra. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Right. So we have 2 items on our agenda to be discussed in public excluded. One of them is the minutes from a previous public excluded meeting, which is a little bit obvious. But the second one is about controller and recovery manager appointments. When we do this process, it is talking about individual people. So it's like an employment process where we go into public excluded to protect those people. But the results of this will obviously become public as they are publicly notified as part of our group plan for those who are controllers and recovery managers. So I'm going to ask for a mover and seconder to go to public excluded, and that will be the completion of the public section of the meeting. And so I'm looking for Sandra, is that you moving? Yes, and Sophie's seconding, Sandra and Sophie. All those in favour, please say aye.
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 Against, carried, and that will be the final part of our meeting that will be done in public excluded. So good afternoon and thank you to those that have joined us online, and we will see you. This committee, next meeting of this committee is formally in March of next year, so that will be the next time this committee meets, and I would expect that will be the time that we will be receiving the final independent review into our civil defence system from Cyclone Gabrielle the next time that we meet. So kia ora and thank you.
Okay, we stop from broadcasting now. Ben? Yep, couple of seconds.